Hello, this is Mr. Smith, and this is a Power and Conflict poetry lesson on Remains, Part 1, for the week commencing the 6th of July 2020. This is primarily for Year 9 students at Reigate School, though of course other students are welcome to watch. So firstly, a bit of context on the poet Simon Armitage. Simon Armitage's poetry is known for its colloquial style, strong rhythms, and voice. What do I mean by this? Well, colloquial language is basically casual language, everyday language, a more informal style. Strong rhythms, well, you need to look at the flow of the poem, the rhythm, the enjambment, the caesura, where it stops and breaks, where it runs on in a line, that kind of thing. And you also need to think about the individual voice of the poem, the voice of the poem in terms of the narrator, the character created by the poem, very, very important. Now, Armitage made a film for Channel 4 in 2007 called The Not Dead and has a collection of poems of the same name from which this poem is taken. So there's both a documentary and a collection of poems called The Not Dead, and Remains is part of that collection. Armitage interviewed veteran soldiers of different wars, including the Gulf War. Remains is based on a true story. So the events of this poem is based on a true story and an actual soldier. And there'll be a video posted on Show My Homework later in the week about this person. Essentially a clip from the documentary. So this is very real, this is very graphic, this is very serious and very contemporary. It's not that long ago. 2007 may seem like a long time ago to some of you. However, remember, this is compared to Exposure, which was written in the First World War, and Charge of the Light Brigade, which was written in the 19th century. So it's very, very recent and very, very vivid compared to the other poems we've looked at. So Remains, what are the main messages of the poem? So Armitage is explores the moral issues surrounding conflict. What are the moral questions, moral issues that are thrown up as a result of conflict? And then Armitage is exploring the effects of conflict on a soldier, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's almost certainly the case, it is the case that Guardsman Tromans suffered from PTSD as a result of this incident and others. Now, I want you to think about the titles, okay? It's something that I go on about an awful lot, but particularly think about Exposure, the double meaning of that, and then Remains. Okay, in this poem there's going to be a description of human remains, and that's partly what the title links to, human remains. Then also the remains of a memory, and a memory that you can't get rid of, a traumatic memory. So that's the power of this title. So I'm just going to read the poem to you, and I just want you to think about what kind of feelings it gives you. What do you learn about the experience of the soldier? Remains. On another occasion, we get sent out to tackle looters raiding a bank, and one of them legs it up the road, probably armed, possibly not. While myself and somebody else are all of the same mind, so all three of us open fire, three of a kind all letting fly, and I swear, I see every round as it rips through his life. I see broad daylight on the other side. So we've hit this looter a dozen times, and he's there on the ground, sort of inside out. Pain itself, the image of agony. One of my mates goes by and tosses his guts back into his body. Then he's carted off in the back of a lorry. End of story. Except not really. His blood shadow stays on the street, and out on patrol. I walk right over it week after week. Then I'm home on leave. But I blink. And he bursts again through the doors of the bank. Sleep, and he's probably armed, possibly not. Dream, and he's torn apart by a dozen rounds. And the drink and the drugs won't flush him out. He's here in my head when I close my eyes, dug in behind enemy lines. Not left for dead in some distant, sun-stunned, sand-smothered land, or 6 feet under in desert sand, but near to the knuckle, here and now. His bloody life in my bloody hands. So now I'll be annotating the poem, mainly thinking about language. I will comment on form and structure, but I'm also going to put up a video from Mr. Bruff explaining the form and structure in more detail. So the first stanza. As you notice, you have this colloquial or casual language. On another occasion. This may mean a couple of things. Firstly, that it's happened before, that these kind of ill-planned, ill-judged events, these messy or huge mistakes happen more than once. They happen many times. And again, I have a feeling this is a kind of a forced tone to this, that he's trying to make it feel casual and light-hearted, or not even light-hearted, but he's trying to make himself feel tough when actually he's not. And then we have this word looters. Now this is what raises the first moral issue. Someone looting a bank is a criminal, but that should be a police issue. It shouldn't be something for the soldiers to get involved with, because it's very much a massive grey area. A soldier should be engaged in warfare, and that's what leads to this dangerous grey area of the poem. And again, we have more colloquial language, again perhaps suggesting that this sort of thing has happened before, and then again suggesting that this person is, the narrator is trying to remain casual, remain calm, when actually it's deeply disturbed them. This last line could be considered a refrain, one that's repeated throughout the poem, and again it leads to a very serious moral issue. If the looter was armed, it's not murder. It's still a questionable thing, but under the conventions of war, the Geneva Convention and other rules of war, I know it sounds strange that there are rules of war, but there are, this would not be considered murder, because he was at least holding a weapon and could therefore be considered a threat. However, if the looter was not holding a weapon and they've shot him, it's not a threat, and even worse, it's murder, because it's not a soldier in any sense of the word. It's essentially a civilian. And this moral dilemma, this moral ambiguity, is what really destroys this soldier's mental health, and it's the source of a lot of the pain in this poem. Now you have this first line, myself and somebody else, the repetition of somebody else. It's to show that he's not alone. He wants to. He's not alone in what he did. It's sharing the blame, but it's not, grassing or snitching. He doesn't want to name the fellow soldiers. There's very much this kind of keeping ranks or forming ranks, or not getting your fellow soldiers in trouble. So he is sharing the blame without incriminating his fellow soldiers. But also to sense of this kind of mob mentality. You may know that when people are in a crowd, they're more likely to do something just because others are, and they're more likely to do something illegal or violent because others around them are doing it. They're kind of pushed on by the mob, kind of driven on. And it's also a bit depersonalizing. It's like the soldiers are almost not human anymore themselves. They're kind of just, their only function is to cause violence, it seems. So we have again this repetition of 3. It feels very unified, it feels very together, very, it should feel like a positive thing. 3 of us, 3 of a kind. It should feel a powerful positive thing, but instead it's very negative, because what they're doing is wrong. What they're doing is wrong, what they're doing is violent. And we have the word swear, or I swear. There's kind of double meaning to that word. When you swear to something, you're making a promise. You're taking an oath. You're saying, trust me, this is true. But it could also be that perhaps he swore in the middle of all this. He swore at the reality of what was going, at the shock of what was happening. He swore out loud. He used profanity. So there's that double meaning. And then the fact that it's enjambment, it comes at the end of the line before running on to the next line. The fact that it kind of stands there by itself leads to the fact, or lends itself to the fact, that there is this double meaning to this word. Remember, at any time you can pause the video and catch up with the annotations. Got the repetition of I see. Again, it's graphic, what he's going to describe. It's unflinching. He keeps his eyes open. He doesn't shy away from it. He doesn't hide away from it. And then also the idea that he's seeing it over and over again. There was the one time where it actually happened, the event happened, but then he keeps imagining it, he keeps dreaming about it, he keeps reliving it, which is where the post-traumatic stress comes in. So you have this again, he's looking at it at the time, he's not flinching away from it, he's going to describe it graphically, brutally, but he's also reliving it, reimagining it, and dreaming about it. Having nightmares, I should say, really, having nightmares about it. So now you have the harsh reality, the brutal reality of hitting someone with 3 assault rifles. The violence, the verb rip, ripping for his life, ripping for his body. They can see broad daylight on the other side. He's being ripped in half, essentially, by the velocity and power of these bullets from 3 assault rifles simultaneously. And then you have sort of inside out, again, this casual language, simultaneously being very graphic, very brutal, and again showing that the soldier feels perhaps numb to what he's done at that moment, kind of it feeling kind of unreal, like not being able to grasp what's actually happening. And it's also very dehumanizing, the person they've just killed. They've dehumanized them. It doesn't feel like a person. It feels like just a body, flesh on the ground. So you have these 2 words, pain and agony. The looter is dying a slow, awful death. When the looter first lies on the ground, or falls to the ground, I should say, they're not dead. It's a very, very, very awful way to die. It's hard to think of much worse, to be honest. But also, this image is torturing the soldier. And you may think that's fair. You may think that they should be tortured by it. You may reconsider by the end of the poem. But the soldier is being tortured by this image of agony. The soldier feels the pain mentally. Again, the casual graphic violence of tosses his guts. The man has been torn apart by the bullets and his guts are outside of his body. It's casual, graphic, numb, dehumanizing violence. Carted off in the back of a lorry, treated like an animal or even rubbish. Again, that dehumanizing effect. Just a plenary then. So far, do you think Remains is more or less effective than Exposure at portraying the realities of war? Thank you very much, Year 9. I hope this video has been useful. And please do look on Show My Homework for the other tasks during the week. Thank you.